Everyone, I'm Andre Perry, fellow at the Brookings Institution. It's an honor to present to you today. I'm somewhat apologetic for my appearance. I actually just moved into a home in Maryland here. And so I was a little bit disheveled. You're in my kitchen right now. But I'm going to present to you on a lot of the work that I'm doing around housing access and equity. My work generally revolves around Black majority cities and neighborhoods, and a lot of this can be found in the book Know Your Price: Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities. And you can see here, there are more than 1,200 Black majority cities all throughout the United States, clustered here in the South, moving up the the Eastern Seaboard. But the story starts with me at home. This is 1320 Hill Avenue, Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. As you can see, the roof is bowed a little, it's boarded up. Vegetation is overgrown. No one lives in it. No one has lived in it for the last 20 years. As the story is told to me by this woman in your upper right-hand corner, her name is Elsie Boyd. I call her Mom. And the story was told to me that when I was born, that there was a deal made between my maternal grandmother and Mom that she would take me in. It was told that I know at the time my mother was poor. She already had a child at the age of 15. She had me when she was 17. And it was during a time when the steel industry started to decline in Pittsburgh. So you had a lot of job loss, poverty, and a lot of the social conditions that go along with it. As you can see here, I was not the only one that lived in 1320 Hill Avenue. She took in kids, Black kids, white kids, for varying durations. Some would stay a few weeks, some would stay a few months. Others, like myself, I stayed till I graduated from high school. And there's a reason for that. My father, who's pictured here, he was addicted to heroin. He was in and out of prison throughout his early 20s. He eventually landed in the Jackson Penitentiary outside of Detroit, and where he was murdered in prison. He was stabbed with a single stab wound to the heart. My family used to tell me he died breaking up a fight, but part of my book, Know Your Price, I went to the areas in which he lived because I wanted to look at the overall conditions in which he lived. And that's when I started looking at home prices and the impact of those home prices on our lives. And as you can see, this is a chart that looks at the home prices, the median home values, the listing price by the concentration of Black people in a neighborhood. And as you can see on the x-axis, that bottom axis, as the concentration of Black people increases, the price of the homes decrease. So you can see here homes in which the share of the Black population is less than percent are priced on average about $340,000. As the concentration increases, where the share of the Black population is 50% or higher, that it reduces to about half. But a lot of people will say that's because of education, that's because of crime. But those are things you can control for in a study, so we can get an apples to apples comparison of homes in similar situations, homes of similar sizes. So that's exactly what we did. We took the absolute price difference, and we looked at structural characteristics. So we looked at homes with the equivalent size, the same number of rooms, same number of other structures. But then we controlled for neighborhood amenities, things like education, crime, walkability, and all those fancy Zillow metrics. And what we found pretty much astounds that homes that homes in Black neighborhoods compared to their equivalents in white neighborhoods are underpriced by 23%, amounting to about $48,000 per home on average. Accumulatively, that's about 156 billion in lost equity, 156 billion. And that's happening all across the United States, wherever there's enough of a concentration for Black people. And you can see this here on the map, that wherever you see a magenta circle, that represents the devaluation. Wherever you see a green circle, that represents greater appreciation in Black neighborhoods. So there are places where homes are in Black neighborhoods are priced higher. Memphis, Tennessee, for instance, 22% difference, about 24,000 per home. And I encourage everyone to go to the devaluation of assets in Black neighborhoods to look at their municipality. But I'm going to show you a list of prices all throughout the United States. Lynchburg, Virginia, 81% difference, 81%. Rochester, New York, 65% difference. And let's go down to Nashville. And homes in Black neighborhoods are priced on average about 10% higher. Wichita Falls, 16% higher. Boston, Massachusetts, 23% higher. Now, I'm not saying that Boston is any less racist than Lynchburg, but you do see price differences. But I just want to put that 156 billion in perspective. 156 billion would have financed more than 4.4 million Black-owned businesses based on the average amount that Blacks use to start up their firms. It would have funded more than 8 million four-year degrees based upon the average amount of a public education. It would have replaced the pipes in Flint, Michigan nearly 3,000 times over, covered almost all of Hurricane Katrina damage, and it's doubled the annual economic burden of the opioid crisis. The reason why I put that there, my father died essentially in prison because he had a drug addiction. What I found in my research, if he would have lived in areas in which he had, where his home prices were higher, he would have had better educational opportunities, better opportunities to go to college, greater opportunities to start a business. Again, the municipalities use money to fund basic services. If he was a white person or even a Black person living in areas with where the homes were valued properly, he would have had a better chance at life. And this is why I say that there's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism can't solve. You know, when we look at Black cities and neighborhoods, we're constantly blaming Black people for their condition. And that's part of this white supremacist myth that says the conditions of Black cities and neighborhoods are a direct result of the people in them. And instead of doing that, we need to examine the policies that created these conditions. I'm going to share with you a clip from a hearing that I participated in which Representative Al Green questioned whether or not there's housing discrimination when we're looking at home prices. Now, if there's any sector that we know discrimination exists, there's no question about it, it's housing, right? We have a history of it. Remember, it was legal to segregate, legal to do a lot of these practices. So we have a long history and the research is clear on that. But I want to show you the response. This is from the appraisal industry leaders around the question of, is there discrimination in housing?
If you think Black people are being discriminated when their property is being appraised, would you kindly raise your hand? One person on the panel. If you think that for fear that I'm not communicating well, If you think that black people are not being discriminated against when their property is being appraised, if you think they're not being discriminated against, kindly raise your hand. Okay, hands now. We're getting some consternation, I see.
You know, and this is important for, I want to say this in this conference, that the reason why we're here, is because we have got to acknowledge that racism exists in our country. We have got to acknowledge. And the evidence of this price difference tells you that there is something going on that we have normalized in our communities, that discrimination still exists. Remember, before the Fair Housing Act, it was normal to discriminate. And we, Black people did understand this, but in the overall environment, in the mainstream, people just thought this was normal. And so what my research shows, that there's something still going on in our markets that's discriminating against Black people. So I'm going to move on, and I want to share some of the impacts of that discrimination. Now, a lot of this will be found, the impact of housing certainly touch business development. Most people know that businesses are started with using the equity from your home. So obviously the lack of equity because of devaluation, you should see fewer businesses, and that's exactly what you see. So Black people represent 12% of the population, but only 2% of the employer businesses, meaning that we only, the businesses that hire at least one employee. Only 1% of Black business owners were able to obtain a loan in their founding, compared to 7% of white entrepreneurs. Now, Black entrepreneurs are denied loans more than twice as often as their white peers. And when we do get loans, we get them at higher interest rates. And about half of Black businesses survived the Great Recession, compared to 60% of white-owned firms. Now, that's going to worsen, obviously, during this pandemic because of the next particular point. 95% of Black-owned businesses did not receive PPP loans as part of the CARES Act. Now, and know that when you're talking about Black people who actually have wealth, it's either coming from housing, which a lot of that wealth was wiped out because of the Great Recession, or it's coming from businesses. And because of this current recession, those businesses are being wiped out. So things are actually worsening. But I wanted this also show that this is not because of quality. This is not because of things that Black people are doing. This is because of discrimination. I want to introduce to you Dorian Moorefield, founder and owner of Chef and chef at Grandma B's. It's a restaurant in Pittsburgh areas, the Hill District. Now, it's a quality business here. He's holding up one of his breakfast steaks. He when I interviewed him, he said he pointed to his customers, who here has the best breakfast steak in Pittsburgh, and all the customers said, "Hey, what you do." It's hilarious. But great reviews, 4.6 out of 5 stars. And we know that these consumer rating tools are great at looking at business quality. And lots of research have said they're a great proxy for quality management, quality service, a lot of different things. So this is a great business, and it's been in existence for over 10 years. But over the last 10 years, it's starting to gentrify. When in 2010, the restaurant was in an area that was essentially, it was 99% Black, virtually all Black. Since then, it's become 80% Black. And during that time, he's told me now the streets are being fixed. garbage getting picked up regularly, the lights are being repaired. So he's seeing all these different things occurring because in general, along the same time, white people are moving in the community. But I wanted to get a sense of how assets are viewed in Black neighborhoods. So we looked at business revenue. We got Dun & Bradstreet data to get the sense of business revenue as well as the race of the owner. But we scraped Yelp data from all the businesses in the United States just so we could really see quality in the hood. And then we controlled for a lot of variables: education, consumer spending power, because I wanted to get an apples to apples comparison between businesses. And what we found that Black, brown, and Asian businesses in Black neighborhoods are actually rated higher than their white counterparts, but after you control for sector, it's exactly the same. So a lot of the discussion around these myths around Black businesses don't have quality, their service is bad, that's just not true. Doesn't hold up from the ratings. But businesses in Black neighborhoods receive fewer stars and lower ratings overall. And you can see as the concentration of Black people increase in a neighborhood, so does the rating and the rating decreases, but they're still higher among Black, brown, and Asian businesses compared to their white counterparts. And what is clear is they're getting lower revenue growth as a result. So all that information, that you really see that that it's not the quality, but people aren't going to Black neighborhoods. The Blacker the neighborhood, people are backing off going into those neighborhoods. Now, what's interesting I'll just throw this up. That's costing highly rated businesses upwards of $4 billion a year. So people not going to quality is just costing those businesses in Black neighborhoods. Now, there's a saying in Black neighborhoods that you still hear occasionally, but our Black elders used to always say it. They would say, our ice is just as cold, meaning our businesses are just as good. But they also knew that if you bypass quality in Black communities, you essentially force high quality businesses to compete with low quality businesses, and you're just not going to get the same kind of revenue. And so I say all that to say that we've got to change the overall conditions in Black neighborhoods, as well as the perception, so that everyone can benefit from the businesses and revenue growth. Now, I wanted to get to some of the issues at play here, and how to counter it. Now, you see here, I say invest in people and invest in place. Now, I'll just write on top. If you invest in place and not people, you essentially encourage gentrification. You will help raise property prices with investments in brick and mortar and place. And people won't be able to keep up with the rising values. That's why you must principally invest in people, direct capital towards homeowners, potential homeowners. And that can come in the form of tax credits. It can come in the form of microloans to help people fix up their homes or facades. It can come in the form of other types of loans. Remember how we got out of the Great Depression and the Great Recession in the 30s. We put money in the hands of people. We either we help them with down payment assistance, we help them with low interest loans. The same thing is true here. In addition, we have to remove the unnecessary bureaucratic barriers into entrepreneurship. And what that means is we don't need financial literacy programs. White people didn't get wealth because they were more financially literate. They were able to acquire wealth because policy enabled them to. You know, the policies of the 30s, and you've heard throughout this conference about redlining and the homeowners loan corporation, the federally backed homeowners loan corporation, and their impact on that. And so we need to remove the drag of racism that continues to burden Black people. Again, that many programs are in place to quote unquote help Black people build capacity. But as you could see from the housing devaluation, the business devaluation, quality is there, but those assets and people are being devalued. However, we do need to make targeted investments in infrastructure. The lack of investment and the devaluation has led to less revenue in place. And so we do need to invest in the beautification of areas and making sure that garbage is picked up, making sure that lights are fixed, because when you have less revenue in a place, those things start to decline. And we need to create incentives to have disadvantaged people invest or create or start their businesses in commercial corridors that are adjacent to neighborhoods. In addition, we need to create new loan products that will enable low-income residents to become homeowners. And I'm going to stop there, but a lot of this you can find in my new book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities. But I want to just have a little bit of a discussion because I'm really hoping folks can send questions in the chat if possible. I think we're able to do that. But the reason why we're here is because I want folks to see that there's actual value in Black communities that is untapped. And, you know, I do a lot of research that essentially identifies the underappreciated assets in Black communities that show that if you just add water, they will grow. But for me, that's a metaphor for life in general among Black people. Investments lead to growth. Now, I just want to be clear. I talk a lot about Black majority neighborhoods and cities, but the reality is that many people live in these places. They're not all 100% Black. They're majority Black. So the point being is that we are all devalued when these things occur. Everyone hurts and suffers as a result. And so I really hope that we can have a discussion, and I hope I can get some questions on this topic, but I'll wait for a few questions. Oh, here we go. Somebody wrote, I want to make sure I understand this correctly. If you invest in only places, then you create an environment for gentrification. But if you invest in people, then they can start business and employ other Black, brown people so they can stay in their communities. No, and it is not, yeah, that's right. It can't be either or. It has to be both. That we should have a plan to invest in actually people and as well as place. And they have to work in tandem because if you invest in people and not place, you know, it's hard for folks, for the infrastructure to rise up quickly by just investing in people. So you do need both. And remember, these infrastructure projects in the past really helped develop cities and neighborhoods outside of Black areas. And we just need to invest in Black places as well. But do not lose sight that we have to invest in people. Another comment, could you build on the idea of how we are all in this together and how we tell the story of we? You know, certainly, if there's anything that we should know from this COVID moment, is that when our neighbors are sick, we are indeed vulnerable. After a few weeks of being socially distanced, you heard business owners, particularly white business owners, argue for increased investment by the federal government. Folks saw the need for some kind of stimulus. Well, I say this: what if you're socially distanced for generations? What does stimulus look like then? And that's the place we are today. We have lots of people who need just investment, not a handout. You heard this from business owners, that folks don't want a handout. They just want their fair investment. And so it's important that when we invest together, we all benefit. We have yet to realize the potential GDP of housing growth and business growth. You know, when Blacks are benefiting, the entire community benefits. That giving money towards Black development isn't at the expense of white people or brown people. It's to benefit us all. And so, I mean, we essentially did that for white people on the PPP loan. 95% of Black businesses did not receive this subsidy. So you don't need whites only signs to know that they are there. And so we all assume that, hey, those investments in businesses, white businesses, help stabilize the economy. Well, an investment in Black businesses and homeowners and other owners will help the entire economy. And so, but we've got to realize that we're all in this together. But it's hard for us to get past this notion that this idea of scarce resources and somebody loses as a result. But that just does not happen. Other questions? I'm hoping to get a few more questions from the audience. Let's go. Let's see what you got. We have about, I think, 10 minutes. Please, thoughts, concerns. I'll ask folks on the, what first came to mind when you saw the price difference? What first came to mind when you saw the price difference? How can we impress on people that scarcity is really just a scare tactic? Scarcity doesn't have to be, particularly when it comes to investment, that we are throttling the economy when we discriminate against Black, brown, and Asian folk. That the economy is built on innovation, participation, and when you have significant portions of your population not contributing, then that actually throttles growth. And so this is not the, when we're talking about investment in Black neighborhoods, brown neighborhoods, you're not talking about then taking money from other people. You're talking about doing what you do in general to white families, just extending it to everyone. And when we do, more people participate in an economy, more growth occurs. That's the kind of thought process we should have. I think someone is have opportunity zones programs helped. Let me say this, that we don't have a lot of evidence because of the reason of it helping, because of the reason I stated. We're not seeing a lot of Black real estate developers, homeowners actually benefiting. And so what it can ultimately lead to is investments in underserved neighborhoods. And by the way, many opportunity zones are actually not in places that are low income Black and brown people. And so I think it's actually going to widen gaps if we don't figure out ways to make sure that the benefits are accrued among the folks, the people in these areas. Again, it's not enough to just invest in place. You must invest in people. How do you convince people that investing in Black businesses and Black home ownership, and that this about investment, making things right, and not about reverse discrimination? You know, it is hard. I mean, when you are looking to invest, you look where there's opportunity. And right now there's opportunity in a social good, and that is helping up the vulnerable. Again, I think this is clear when we look at how COVID and the response. We have got to shore up people who are sick, or we are all vulnerable. When folks in the economy are struggling, it throttles the entire economy. We have yet to realize the kind of economy that we can actually have if Black unemployment is at similar levels of white unemployment. So, and you know, full employment generally is this idea that there are more jobs than people. Well, while white America is at full employment, Black America was not. I'm talking obviously before the pandemic, but as you can see, even in this current recession, white rates are going down much faster than Black rates. I recently saw a stat. I did not validate it yet. I'm looking at it now. That almost 1 in 3 Black people are unemployed. That's simply not tenable for a growing economy. If you don't, you know, I say this, that without shared prosperity, that's essentially a sign of oppression. That people are growing at the expense of someone else. And we've had time periods where Black people were actually working but not employed. And so I don't want to recreate those conditions where folks are not employed or underemployed, Black folk are, and you have another group that's seeing a boom, because you're essentially creating a sort of a dependency that is racialized. Do you have any ideas of how to prevent gentrification in Black neighborhoods when the valuations are so much lower than in white or majority white neighborhoods? Now, and how can we hold appraisers accountable? Now, a great question. Again, invest in people, encourage ownership, Black ownership in these places. Now, I'm actually working with good news. As you probably have seen in recent news articles, there's been a lot of activity around the appraisal industry. I'm happy to say that I'm working with the appraisal industry now on finding solutions. So we are actually going to use data to figure out ways. And I should say, the appraisal industry is not the only industry that's creating this disparity in home prices, lending practices, real estate agent behaviors, all of these, the job market, all of these contribute. We're going to help identify the role appraisers play in that variance. So, you know, how much does the appraisal play? And there's a bunch of areas that we need to look for. Many of the home improvements that occur in Black neighborhoods aren't being valued as high. This arm's length relationship between the appraiser and the bank that created through Dodd-Frank, they're not talking at all, it seems, in Black neighborhoods where there is communication in white neighborhoods. And clearly there's this blatant discrimination going on when it comes to valuing of Black homes. And so there are areas that we can focus on, but I'm actually encouraged by recent events because this is a concrete problem that we can address. Now, I have to close here, but I just wanted to thank you all for having me. But I also, and this goes to this last minute question about co-op models. Now, we're not going to, particularly on the West Coast, we need different models of ownership, home ownership, business ownership, cooperatives, for instance, that it's going to be hard because of inventory, because of the super high price of homes. It's going to be hard to move low-income renters into an ownership model in certain markets. Very hard. But if you're in Detroit, there are many properties that are valued under $30,000 or under a price point that banks won't bank, that we could create if we had new credit scoring systems and new mortgage products. We could put folks in. But the point is, this is the time for innovation. And that's what I hope that a lot will come out of this conference, is that the innovations that will see a new way of creating housing, new ways of creating businesses are developed, because we can remedy some things, but we need new models to develop communities. So I'm going to leave it there. I want to thank you, and a great session. I think it was a great session, great questions. Let's go get it. Have a great day.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Perry.
All right. Hopefully that